Hello and welcome to the Front Row Back Row podcast. My name is Dr. Owen Campbell, and with me, as always, is Dr. Brian Wolf. And today we are going to be talking about something called client risk, right? I am a cash-based PT, and this week I had I have a big client, right? That uses me. Big client meaning he uses me a lot, right? Well, he was supposed to be in town, and he pushed back a month, so that completely changed everything. And now I was commiserating a little bit with Brian at the beginning of the show, and he's like, "Yo, we should kind of do a podcast on this." So if this is something that you have either in a cash based or mobile practice, if you're like Brian, you work with a team or something like that, there's something called client based risk, and it's you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. Brian has talked about before the 4% rule, right? Where you have you want only the biggest referral source you should only be about 4% of your business. So if everyone was 4%, you'd have 25 different referral sources, right? So this is something where we'll go through a case study with me, how it happened, how we can hopefully help you if this is something that you're exposed to. And yeah, hopefully this can be a helpful podcast. And like we talk about on everyone, our company is called Physio Growth, and we are a mentorship group. We are a real life actual business advice mentorship group. Brian has 5 clinics. He's doing $2 million and looking to acquire more. And I had 14 years in corporate experience growing corporate PT practices to a point that they could sell for 8 figures. So we know what we're talking about. We've seen it all, and we will not sugarcoat that there is some not fun weeks like this week for me.
Exactly.
Uh,
That's kind of what I want to talk about today in this podcast, right? Owen was talking about, look, Owen's business. So Owen's
oh,
obviously
to
talking about.
clarify too, right now I have a cash based business.
There
I
you go.
got out of corporate PT to start my own practice because I figured I don't like to listen to anybody.
Well, I think
And the
we were
whole like
talking.
let's synergize on emails wasn't working for me. Uh,
Yeah,
so
I
that's
think.
that's an important part of context here.
Yeah, Owen has a lot of corporate PT background where he's now like had like multiple $1 million exits, and then but also now wanted to start something from scratch. And that's how we started this whole thing, right? Was like learning from soup to nuts how you can go from nothing to having a gigantic practice of 900 clinics and how it all works, right? So we've been through that whole orthopedics realm. Noah was talking about, and again, I know this. Like I started our multi clinic location out of the back of my car, and so with Owen, he was talking about how, now he's got a steady stream of patients, but he's not quite there yet where he's so full that he can't make the next step, which for him, the next step is going to be to find a location. We were kind of chatting about that.
Yep.
So now to set the stage is still doing great, going full time now with the mobile PT, not doing the PRN thing anymore, not doing any of that stuff. But then obviously relying on a client to really push you over the edge. And then now that doesn't happen. So having to pivot a little bit and adjust. And so
So
yeah, take us through a week and kind of where you are with that.
So right now it's spring in Arizona, which means everybody's here, right? So you start getting things like, "Oh, my grandma's going to be here for a month and a half. Can you work with her?" That type of stuff. So most every mobile PT who's had a business for more than 2 or 3 years, it's pretty slammed, right? Word of mouth in this town, all that stuff, right? Well, I've only had it for a year, so I have good connections. I get a lot of referrals from other PTs, but I probably was about 75% full. So the nice part is that pays my bills, right? That pays mortgage, kids going to daycare, all that stuff. But to run a business and grow a business, I'd like to have 100% full. Um, and that's where this client comes in. So typically they will reach out to me around this time and they will use me for a few hours a day, right? Which is, that other 25% of my business. And well, thing that sucked is, they push back, right? They didn't want to come here for another week or
Yeah.
two. They had something else going on. So all of a sudden, I went from mentally projecting, "Ooh, I could spend some money on ads, and it's okay if I buy an extra, kettlebell or something like that," to, "Ooh, okay, got to tighten up." So that was why I was commiserating with Brian, because that movement changed, on a dime in a few phone calls, where I'm at. So then I had to kind of fight through it a little bit. So, don't have a lot of money for paid ads, right? So it's not like I can just turn that funnel on and just say, $100 a day, get me a client in a week, right? And the other side of that too is there was, well, we could talk a little bit about that first, and then like kind of what my strategy is if you want to like kind of,
Yeah.
stopgap, right?
Yeah, I think that's it, right? Because I think then we talked a little bit about, you know, what you're currently doing and what you're looking to do and how again, what the reasoning for it is. So I think, obviously there was I want to talk about how there's a person in town that got hurt. So explain the kind of the story a little bit and then and more
Yeah.
specifically how it all came down and again, why you the other part of that to help Owen's gonna be a little more vulnerable here. What things about it you didn't like or don't like that you're having to do about it?
Oh yeah. So of course, you got to pay rent, right? So
Yeah.
well, unfortunately, because she's a really nice girl. Um, there's another clinic owner in town who wasn't able to treat patients for a while, right? And she's looking for other therapists to take that slack up, right, so she can keep paying her bills. And unfortunately, I was the boss of many of the mobile PTs in town. Like I was there for their first day treating a patient, or maybe not that, but at least their first day managing a clinic. So, but they got out before I did. I tried to climb the corporate ladder. So they all are busy and they can't help this person out. Well, of course, I'm not. Right. So, I talk with her, and of course, like any good business person, she's got a contracted rate because she did all the work to get the referrals. And I'm not getting those referrals now because I've only been an entity, full time for about 3 months at this point. Um, so I'm sitting there and I'm saying, "Oh man, I'm an employee again." Right. I'm going to
Yeah.
help her out, obviously, because, it's anywhere PT is a small community, but especially here where you don't have a lot of schools churning out a million grads every year. Um, you want to do good by other PTs, right? And, knock on wood, hopefully if I need somebody, she'd help me. Right. But the rate is significantly less than what I would normally see for someone who I got with my own word of mouth. So it's kind of like, not a punch in the face, but at the same time, like, man, I'm almost there. I'm almost there to the point that I didn't have to call her, right? And if some things broke one way or the other the week prior, I would have been fine. No problem. Off to the races, spending money on advertising, and I would have sped up the system probably another 6 months to a year, right? In
Yeah.
terms of volume and referrals. But it all broke differently. Um, and now I'm like, oh man, you know, like all this, I still got to go back to the whole like being an employee thing. But I'm happy to do it. It's temporary, So that was what I was commiserating to Brian about is that,
Yeah.
the fun part is I get to say, look at my, cash PT, and I'm seeing all these people and all these people, look at my fancy client and all that. But then if you expose yourself to client risk where, he's what, 25% of my business, man, if he moves, you better have a backup plan. So
Well, and that's the thing, right? I think, one of the things that I think about with this is twofold, right? It's like this is just another explanation to anybody listening to this is when you think, "Oh, I'm going to close this person. I got him." And you have not closed that person till the money's in the account, right? That's the
yeah,
reality situation, right? And I've just learned this over and over again. And so I tell people like it's not there. So Owen's kind of like pre-planning and figuring that out. Now that's the trick of this is like how to juggle the two. But then exactly the rug gets pulled out from under you, and all of a sudden you're scrambling a little bit. Now the good news is Owen had a backup plan here, right? Like he had something that he fell into, which means that there's enough business referral partners that you can do that. So that's awesome. I mean, look, that's what I was saying to Owen. I was like, at the end of the day, like you didn't lose the client. The client's coming later than you thought.
yeah.
You're just adjusting. And if in this next month it's like, all right, I got to do this just to get over that hump to be there, like cool, right? And probably, by the way, like just psychologically, I bet there's a little bit of you that's probably like, maybe not push as hard with marketing, maybe not push as hard in this and do this
Oh, 100%.
because it's right
Yeah,
because this person's coming. So a little bit,
yeah.
like I think what I wanted to share with people with this was not all of this is rainbows and cupcakes. You know what I mean? So I think when it comes down to going through this process, like these are normal things that happen to people, and you got to keep pushing all the time
Well, and
because ultimately things
the worst
adjust.
part is if I didn't have this client, or even with this client, I'm only gonna probably make like 10 or 15,000 more this year, um, than what I made, my last job at corporate PT. So like I'm taking the emotional punches in the face and like the early mornings, late nights, all that stuff, because I know that like I want to build an asset, right? I know that
Yeah.
as I go on, these are going to be the things you look back at and say, oh yeah, I remember when I was this, and as you're opening your like second or third clinic, right? But yeah, like in the moment, you're just kind of like, oh God,
There's a line.
thank God, my best friend from college is a has walked this path before.
Well, here's the thing that I would tell most people, right? That I would tell most people is the first million is the hardest to get. If you look at anybody, the first million is the hardest to hit. Once you hit that, then it becomes easier to do it again and again and again. So
Yeah,
meaning to scale the business. So a lot of it is also figuring out where you want to go with this business. I mean, Owen, we're talking about this too. This is just the aspect of an entrepreneur and then and relationships to what's going on, right? There's just different aspects to try and figure out how to make it grow, how to make it build, how to keep sustaining the growth, right? But there's going to be volatility, which is not the nature of any business, right? I mean,
yeah,
for us, January in the Northeast, January and February are always a touch slower. People get sick,
yeah,
it's cold, beginning of the year, deductibles reset, blah, 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 all that stuff. But the reality is, like, I know March is going to be a monster for us. Then it carries a lot through. And, we have our fitness stuff. Our fitness stuff kind of booms in January and December and February, right? For all of our stuff. So I think when you think about the differences amongst all the different aspects that come with business, like this is a normal thing. So, and kind of talk through a little bit about as you're going through the process with this person, again, share what you want to share and how you want to share it. But like, let's get a little tactical. Talk about like where you're taking a haircut, what you're thinking, how this all plays out.
yeah.
What's the topic? It sounds like it's temporary because as soon as
It's
women
temporary, yeah.
heals, they should. Yep, yep,
So when it comes down to it, it's, probably for the next month, right? Because, hopefully she'll bounce back in that time, right? And then when I'd have to do the percentages here, but it's basically I'm getting about 2/3 of my normal rate, right? Um, so that is, it kind of sucks, but it's better than what I was getting when I was, working for someone else doing kind of this like cash pay PRN stuff. The other one I was getting something like 35-40%. So it's a haircut, but it's not like catastrophic. And the other thing I looked at is, again, she's done a lot of good work to get a lot of referrals where she could just pass them off, right?
yep,
Uh, I have, I've done good work, but I haven't had the time, that will build that or the money to like kind of, you know, um, pour gasoline on that, right? So she's in a position of power, right? And I look at it and say, well, okay, if I get 4 visits at 66%, right, versus 0 visits, right? Yeah, okay. Like I'm busier, but unless I had like a big marketing event or something where, I had like a meeting with someone who might be a referral source, that's where, I'm like, okay, I don't think I'd turn that down because that could be future business for me. But the
yeah,
way the schedule fell, her patients wanted afternoons, mine were in the mornings. And I'm just like, you know what? Yeah, I could get very detailed about like, well, okay, I'm doing X minutes and blah, blah, blah. But in the end, like we're all PTs. She's, by all accounts, a great PT. I was able to talk with her for, half an hour. And the way she looks at like how you treat patients and all that, I'm just like, look, you know, mobile PTs especially, the biggest worry is you get in a car accident, right? So like if I had something like that happen to me where I had to be on disability, for months and months and months, right? And I don't know exactly what happened to her. I didn't ask, but I would hope that I could kind of call on my people to kind of be like, hey, would you do this at a contracted rate? So there's a little bit of that like PTs helping PTs vibe,
yeah.
but it's one of those things where you're like, you know what, it's all falling into place. I'm going to do it, but I don't love that I have to.
Well, and that's what I was telling me that I was saying, like, listen, like the cool part about this is, and I'll tell my quick story here, right? Like, there's a physician that called me, and basically was like, hey, there's this mission, there's this person, that has these last dying wishes, and they can't get anybody to come to their home, and they're having all these issues, and blah blah. No one will go see them. No one will go do that. And I told Owen, I was like, this wasn't even about the money, right? This wasn't even about like we were going to figure it out just to help this poor woman who did it.
Yeah,
And that's a lot of what we do as a profession anyway. And so the reality is like, again, it's almost like good guys win. You're going to create good karma. You're going to create good pieces that'll help for that capacity. And I think what we're talking about here with Owen and that capacity is one, you're still doing great on the money
yeah,
side, right?
yeah.
Number one.
It's
Number
still paying
two is
out, still fine.
yeah. And number two is there are different ways to approach these business aspects, right? You can approach from the standpoint of like, like Owen clearly has a relationship with this person. Like here's the thing. I can be the more objective person here because I have no idea who this person is who had this, right? So and vice versa for Owen on me.
Yeah.
So like when I look at this, I wanted to get a little tactical with it real quick before we wrap this up. But one of the things that I was going to say, so Owen was talking about how she's like in a position of power, where she's at, and blah blah. I can tell you too, there's a lot of positions where like now Owen knows this person, builds a good referral source. There's that angle that will have something that helps him down the road, right?
Yeah.
That will be something where she's now a referral partner in that capacity. He evaluates that process and is doing this, and that's going to work really well. On the flip side, say it's not that situation. You don't know the person. You don't necessarily know if it's going to be a good referral partner
And say I'm
situation.
busy, right? And
Yeah.
say like, "Oh
Yes.
my god, I need help," and like, "I can only afford this much," but I'm like, "Oh, I'm
Yes.
turning off, 3 of my other patients," you know?
Exactly. Now the leverage has changed again, right? It's
Mhm.
gone back into Owen's court. And that's where like what I was talking to him about was like, hey, like depending on the 2/3 rate, you can also just say, hey, I'm going to see the person for 45 minutes. And guess what? Now your rate's back to where it was. Now
Yeah.
it's up to that person to negotiate it with that individual to say, hey, like, and again, like then we're like, well, that I can't charge this, I can't charge. It's like I get it, but this is also what my rate is. And
Yeah.
so this is where tactically, even if you reduce the amount of money that you're going to collect, you can technically reduce also the amount of time you see that patient. And for those
Yeah.
people who are like, well, that's not great quality care, I promise you, by the way, if you don't think it's great quality care and you're treating somebody in 45 minutes and you can't give great quality care, you shouldn't be listening to this podcast. You should get more clinical mentorship. Number one. Number two is the aspect of where you think about this process with other people. It's not just how you raise prices, it's also how you can get time back. We constantly talk about that. So I think that's
Yeah.
something where you can think about that as you grow. So say this turns into something where it's a different type of avenue. Those are some places you can go to if it makes more sense financially. So
Well,
anyway,
and
that
that's
was something to be a little
that
tactical with it.
that's what I probably would have done if it was, say, like, you know, say, one of my best PT colleague friends here, right? And
Yeah.
I'm busy, he's busy, and he's just like, dude, I need something to come in, right? Then I would
Yeah.
say, like, okay, I could do 45 minutes here, and I could do that, and we would work something out on, like, in terms of like rate stuff. Um, Even if it was, we talked to the patients, and a lot of times the nice part is especially with, building that rapport, and that's the advantage I have, having 15 years
Yeah.
treating, is that I have about 8 people I could call, right?
It's
And I
awesome.
realize the value of that. Like, if you look at it,
Yeah.
a lot of my referrals are actually from other PTs, right?
It's great.
So part of the reason I built so fast and so well as a cash PT is because I have really good friends
Referral
who are like,
partners.
dude, just here, take my patient. Like, I don't want to treat them. They're 10 miles that way and I'm 10 miles this way. They don't do the contracting thing. But like, I totally understand it because they're doing it because they're busy. Like, she's doing it because she can. So
Yeah, and I think that's the part that Owen sees here as the angle that I would say is
yeah.
is really effective, right? Because my mind is when I think about okay, like this is what's been really effective for Owen is these referral partners and building this relationship. Well, guess
Yeah.
what? That's awesome. That's the aspect of how you want to continue to grow, right?
Yeah.
Now, what it can also mean to focus on for Owen is to also find other referral partners and more referral partners to
Yeah.
send in people so he gets busier, right? And so that's the concept. So
Yeah.
no, I think it's awesome. And again, one of the things that we do that Owen mentioned at the top of the show at Physio Growth is help people get to a better place, right? So listen, if you're an employee in a business and want to learn how to make more money within that business, we do that type of mentorship. If you're somebody who is starting their own cash-based practice and wants to know what the heck is going on and what they need to do to get busier, kind of like we're just talking about with Owen right now, we help those people. If you want to scale to 20 plus clinics, I'm doing it. So we can help you with that too. So if there's all sorts of different places where PTs are in their continue of their career, we help people make impacts in their careers. So again, if that's something you're interested in, it's $99 a week, a month. Happy to help. Physio-growth.com.
Yeah. Land the plane,
Cool.
baby. All
Land it.
right. All right. With that, buddy, we are out, my friend. Have a good week.
You too, bud. See ya.